Let's talk a little bit about, tuning at the racetrack. Rex, a lot of people come to us, at tracks and they want to talk about shocks, but really one of the things that we need to look at the most when we work on cars, because shocks is such a small tuning device on the race car, is springs and what rates they have and when they should change them. So what how do you know when you should change a spring versus making a bar change, let's say, or a shock change?
Well, spring change is a pretty big change at the racetrack. Most of the chassis builders, when you pick a car up, know what kind of spring rate it takes for the race car, and I'd highly recommend going with that. A starting point on what they do, what they recommend. As far as tuning goes, I would rather work with the bar factors, tire stagger, wheel offset, weight bias before I do a spring. But when you do a spring, a few things to look at. If you got a race car that's too tight on corner entry, you can soften the left front spring if it's too tight off the gas on corner entry, and it helps the car turn in. If you get a car that is not scotching up real good on the right rear, you can actually go up on spring rate, get a little bit more feel to it. Now, today's world, a lot of guys are using spring smashers and setting the cars up that way, and running very, very light left rear springs with a lot of load in them. I recommend on changing that left rear spring, especially if you're running a really light tall spring, about every 10 nights, because it just fatigues the spring so bad. I would check your spring rates, have your springs checked on a spring checker at the beginning of the year. If you run a rough racetrack, or if you run a light spring package in your car, I'd check them about mid-year as well, because springs will fatigue, and especially with the left rear, when that spring starts going away, you just start losing drive. You start keeping adjusting for it, but you don't catch it. Spring checkers, or the spring smashers rather than load sticks, is a good way to find it now, but it's a tough deal. If you got the opportunity to use a load stick, if you're changing springs at the racetrack, you definitely want to get that opportunity for a load stick, because you can set the car back up, change the spring rate, but go back to the exact same wedge numbers that you had in it before. So today's world, the load sticks and spring smashers are definitely coming into play.
Yeah, I mean the load sticks and the smashers both, they have given us a lot of information over the past few years. So Rex talked about longevity of the springs. One of the things that we've learned with the load sticks and the smashers is not necessarily how the spring compresses that we're looking at the rate, it's how it recoils. So as the spring fatigues, we'll see a spring that keeps the same rate and compression, but how it rates and extension is a little bit different. So that's where working with someone has access to a smasher or a load stick like that will definitely help your program. Rex talked about a little bit of tuning wise. I know me personally, left front spring I use a lot, because it does have such an impact on freeing the car up or tightening the car up on corner entry, and it just does corner entry. It doesn't have as much of an impact on exit as anything else. Right front spring, that affects the car all the way around the corner. You can tighten the car in, but it frees it off. Right rear spring's the same way. You can tighten the car in, but it frees it off if you're going up in spring rate. So you've got two things that happens when you're working with the right front and the right rear, especially. In some cases, even the left rear, you have two actions that happen, whereas the left front, you only have one action that happens. So I do use, like we talked about before on the shocks, left front's a really nice area to tune with, especially on corner entry.
For more information on this or any other AFCO products, check us out at afcoracing.com.